Okay, Dave, can we just go back? I mean, we started a bit topsy-turvy. I've talked about the end and we talked about the middle. Can we just go back to the beginning again? You've already mentioned that you used to go racing on your own as a child. Like I say, for me, that'd be quite daunting as a sort of an 8-year-old. So when you got in there, what part of it was it that hooked you?
I mean, I really liked the horses. It was when I first started going. Obviously, there was jump and flat racing, but I soon realised it was jump racing I had a real love for, and it was little things. It was you see the jockeys coming out, and then you get to know faces and trainers, and you get to know. It was just the whole thing. I mean, I used to walk down to stand by a fence and watch the horses jump the fence and the speed they were going over. It was just very. It just grabbed me, and I just wanted more of it, really.
Did you ever get in any sort of trouble from your dad for sneaking off school and going racing?
Well, in those days he didn't know, but then after a while, I think he just gave in and saw that was my career path, and he ended up letting me skive off school and take me racing, and so I think they just gave in with me. Me and school didn't agree, so.
What sort of point in your going racing career did you realise that you could sort of put money on horses and maybe earn a few quid?
um, I mean, I'd be totally honest. I used to have a bet, and the days I did go to school, I would always have my lunch break at, where people had lunch at school. I would come out for lunch, which they thought I was going back to my dad's house type thing, which obviously I wasn't. Used to go round to the Shepperton station and have a bet in the betting shop and get the person in the cafe to put the bet on. So I was probably betting in those days from about 14, I would say.
Okay, so at that point, were you sort of seriously getting involved with the form book?
I used to sit and watch for them because mum and dad were interested. When they were sat at home, especially my mum, she would sit there with, with the time form annuals, and she would work out all the ratings and add up the weights, and so I was learning off her because it was so interesting. I thought, what's going on? What are you doing? And say a handicap at Newbury on a Saturday, she'd write the figure of what the time form rated, and then she'd work out the weights and show you how to do it. So from a very young age, you had quite an understanding of what form was, and both my brothers did as well. We were very much. It wasn't just betting; it was actually the understanding of how racing worked.
Yeah, because that was quite an investment a day. Because I remember buying a time for manual. It was half a week's pay it cost me.
It was I.
So they were quite serious.
Hell, my mum was very serious. That was her one go-to thing every year. And as I say, we've got the annuals in storage, and I'd say she didn't miss many years. One or two. That was it.
So did your mum sort of teach you when you showed an interest?
Oh, definitely, yeah. We would sit there and work out the races, and and you'd come up with an answer, and then yeah, because in the time frames it might, that you started to read about the horse and say, that this horse in particular loves soft ground. So then you worked out so at a young age you knew what soft ground was, and she'd say to you, why, the horse wants soft ground. So when it look at the forecast, it's going to rain, and so I think I was before my years with the form book, yeah.
No, it was Barry Beasley, one of my previous interviewees, that put you in the frame for this interview. So thanks, Barry, and
Thanks,
thanks to
Barry.
you for
Yeah.
agreeing to do it. He tells me you worked together at the Tote head office. How early in your career was that?
That was very early, yeah. We worked there. I worked under Barry. We were doing the anti-post odds for future races. And again, a good learning curve, because to do that job, you need knowledge of the form book. You have to sit down, you look at a race, and you price the race up. So it was another step in having a good education on the form book. Yeah, we worked very well together. So I think we got more right than we got wrong. So
Was that under Lord Wyatt of Weeford? Was it
it
still
was,
his
yes, it
reign?
was, yeah, it was.
So you also learnt about percentages, forming a market. So where did you learn how to do that?
I think it's just, again, when I take an interest in something, I am very obsessive with it, and I just knew if I was going to do this job, you had to know how to work out the percentages, and I was very aware of bookmakers odds because, again, I was betting from quite a young age, and in those days you used to have fractions, and when my dad used to take me to the races, and obviously he put my bet on, But say he was back in I remember a race at Ascot, and he took me on a Wednesday to Royal Ascot. I'm sure it was a Wednesday because he was half day closing, and he was a big fan of Dick Hearn and Joe Mercer, and he wanted to back a horse in the last race called Biskra. I remember this, and whatever he was going to have on, it was 14-1. So I don't know what he had on. And I said to him, why did you do that? And he looked at me and I said, well, it's 100-7. You know, he would have had, say, £7 at 14-1. I said, no, Dad, you have £100 at 7. Because the fraction, you know, you're getting better value. And it was, so that was from a very early age. So I'd say that was 14, 15, maybe, you know, 14 even.
Right, I'm going to put you on the spot because I ask everybody that's a good odds compiler
Right.
the same question, and so far I've yet to have an answer.
Okay.
How do you do it?
How do you odds compile? You read
where do you start
race.
with a race?
Yeah.
You're looking at a race. There it is. There are the runners. Tell me how you do it.
In my day, what I would have done, say a 6-horse race, you would find your favourite. So just say if we were going to use, you know, a 2-mile chase, you'd find your favourite, and then you'd work out, to me, how I did it, you'd work out what possibilities you've got of getting that favourite beat. So if you don't fancy or don't give much chance to 4 of the others, the odds are going to be shorter. You might have one danger. So you centre around the horses you think can win the race. So then you know, if there's only 2 out of 6 can win, and you originally thought it might be a 6-4 chance, it's probably going to be an even money chance. Then you've got your danger, and you make the other 4 bigger prices.
Would you work to 100% and add a bit of profit margin, or
2% every horse it was, and then over 10. So a 10-horse race was 120%, and if it was a 13-horse race, you add on 1 for every one after that. So it would be a 13-horse race would be 123%.
Okay. So you were working doing the anti-post at the Tote.
Tote.
Any terrible ricks there where somebody's tucked you right up?
Well, I carried on doing that as well for Marshall Racing, but my anti-post at the Tote was really under Barry. So if he made a rick, he can take the blame for it. So I did it at Marshall Racing on my own. And again, I'd like to think we got more right than wrong, but you can't be right all the time. And yeah, we made a very big rick one day. I think it was the Greenall Whitley back in the day, and 14ers Express, Arthur Stevenson, Chris Grant. I just got it in my head this horse couldn't win, hate the ground. You know, raining all morning was the forecast, so I was quite comfortable. But when we opened up and all the lines lit up and everybody, as they say, every man and his dog wanted to be on it, you start to doubt yourself and you look back in the form, but I think, have I missed something? And the horse duly obliged, so I got that wrong, yeah.
Tell us a bit more about Marshall Bookmakers. I'm told based in the West End, so that sounds like quite a...
Yeah, that was John Marshall. I'm still friendly with him, and that was a new Bookmakers at the time. Had horses, did very well, you know, but it didn't last. Just I think through the backers moved away, and it's hard to break through against the big boys. Really, you've got Ladbrokes, Hills, Corals. You're never really going to break through against them. So I think they stepped back humbly, shall we say?
Okay, there was working as a in a bookmaking career something that you sort of thought about seriously, or was that just a toe in the door to racing?
I would never really have gone down that route of bookmaking purely because any connection I had with the bookmakers was more anti-post, making the odds. Because the side of bookmaking I enjoyed more was making the odds, which is again really based on the form book. It's that side of the interest for me, because you're looking at the horses. Even though you're making odds, you're still judging a horse or gauging the chances of a horse, and then you watch all the races and you're trying to spot, say, a future winner and, you know, a trainer that's quite shrewd, and you keep an eye on that horse. So I never really had an interest in going into the bookmaking side of things, no.
Okay, just for example, like Marshall Bookmakers, would they have had Barney Curley type characters on their books that they would still lay that were a great lead for you? Would you sort of follow people in?
You used to have because martial racing were quite inventive in the sense they would bet on races that not everybody would. They would take a chance and bet. I think the greatest one was, well, not being a flat race, I'm not sure. Was it called the Lockinge or something? Anyway, but Horage, Matt McCormack, was odds-on favourite, had won so many races on the bounce. And we just took the view that the win had to come to an end at some time. So we advertised, in those days, it probably was the Sporting Life actually, we advertised, for argument's sake, 11 to 8 on the morning of the race. And the Sporting Life predicted odds was 4 to 6. So you can imagine everything lit up. But in that race, a couple of days before, one of the other owners of a horse had rung to speak to me and say, you know, they'd like to back their horse in this race. What odds we could? So you knew there was a chance of the horse getting beat. So you used to get good leads. You know, there was little bits of information, but not many, but there was some good ones, yeah.
And I'm told that you were good enough at form to produce a card for racecourse bookmakers. Now, they'd have been quite unforgiving as you got it wrong many times.
I used to, when I came out of the bookmaking or doing the odds for the bookmakers, I wanted to work for myself and have a go on my own. And I had no idea what job that was going to be, if I'm honest. So I started off actually by writing to racecourses, producing a form like an analysis at the bottom of the horse on the race card. But like anything, when you start, there was not much takers. There was not, not much interest. And then suddenly Bath Racecourse rung me and said, "We're interested. Can you send a few like trial runs?" And they took me on and did that. And I did Bath, and I had another company came to me and said they just wanted to have. And none of this was kind of like a tipping service. It was more information. And they wanted to have a breakdown on form for races like anti-post races, so they had that in front of them. And then I got approached by 2 or 3 racecourse bookmakers to give them a form guide. But it wasn't, again, they weren't asking me to say, do you think this will win or do you think this will lose? It was more, this horse wants soft ground, and if it starts off good to firm, and there's 6 hours of rain forecast, so they had more knowledge maybe than the others. So I did that for a little while, but it didn't last long. But it was a kind of an avenue into getting something working for yourself.
And how serious were you punting in those days?
I had my moments of punting. I'd like to say before I became an agent. But I was manager of horses for 2 years, 18 months, 2 years, and they were based with a very shrewd trainer, and so there were moments that I had a bet, but I've never been, or even from young days, I was never someone who would bet very often. But when I did think I'd found a race where a horse could win, I'm more likely to put more money on in one go than, say, go to the races and bet every day. I used to go racing for weeks on end and never have a bet. It wasn't about the betting, but I was always keeping my eyes open for something with a future possibility, shall we say.
And finally, for this part, did professional punting ever come into your head?
I think once you've had a bet and been successful, I wouldn't say I was mega successful, but I probably won more than I lost. It does cross your mind, because you think, what would I be like if I was given, if that was the future? But I've never done it. Probably the right choice, but it did cross my mind, yeah.
You think you could have?
70-30, yes.